dimensions in education: global and national context of education, sociocultural, political, economic, and environmental. Global context of education: globalization. It is a process or set of processes that embodies a transformation in the spatial organization of social relations and transactions expressed in transcontinental or interregional flows and networks of activity, interaction, and power. Globalization is evident in the following situations or conditions: A. The evolution of global systems of communication and transportation. B. The technological advancement of the internet and telecommunications. C. The incorporation of local, regional, and national economies into a worldwide global economy. D. An increase in interaction between societies, resulting in global culture, which exists along with an array of distinctive local, national, and regional cultures. E. The emergence of a worldwide international system that is eroding the traditional boundaries between domestic and international politics. F. The increasing impact of human activity upon the planet's ecosystem and the increasing constraints on human activity exposed by the limits of the system. G. An expanding global consciousness that expands our awareness of being members of the global human species with the world as our community. We have here the enumeration under the impact of globalization on education. We have in total three. Number one, economic impact. Number two, political impact. Number three, socio-cultural impact. Economic impact: increasing commercialization, commodification, and the corporate takeover of education. It is the branding, globalization, and learning to be consumers. Movement of higher education toward supporting the nation's wealth or growth instead of focusing on the liberal education of undergraduates. Then this is the changing of the role of education in terms of preparing students for the world of work. The political impact: the threat to the autonomy of national education systems by globalization, reduction of state and government support and subsidy for education, increase and close partnership of higher education with industry and government-sponsored techno-science initiatives, delocalization and changing technologies and orientations in education, more protection and regulation of intellectual property rights, a specific loss of nation, state sovereignty, and weakening of the notion of the citizen as unified and unifying concept. Third, socio-cultural impact. UNESCO's learning, the treasure within commonly referred to as the Delors Report, proposed a holistic and integrated vision of education based on the paradigms of lifelong learning and the four pillars of learning to be, to know, to do, and to live together. The Delors report identified a number of tensions generated by technological, economic, and social change between the individual and the universal, between the local and the global, between tradition and modernity, between the infinity of information and the limitation of the human capacity to assimilate knowledge, between short term and long term considerations, between spiritual and material. Reforms in education. Universal literacy and universal access to education, educational quality as a critical component of equity, education as lifelong education, education as human right, education for peace, tolerance, and democracy, eco-pedagogy, or how education can contribute to sustainable ecological development, new technologies of information and communication. We have major trends and development of education, major paradigm shift in education. We have the division, the connotation of from, then to, under learner-centered and learning-oriented curriculum. From teacher as a sole purveyor of knowledge to teacher as a facilitator and motivator of learning. From rigid selection of students based on single and fixed criteria to more open and multiple standards. From prescribed pedagogy to more flexible teaching styles. Under contextualized learning, from pre-organized subject matter to contextualized themes generated from global entities and the culture. From knowledge limited to the local scene to globalized knowledge, values, attitudes, and skills. From traditional pedagogies to more modern strategies of teaching and learning. Under the holistic and integrated approach to education, from knowledge as the only learning outcome sought to development of skills and attitudes, skills and competencies, not through classroom instruction alone, but the entire school culture and atmosphere. From knowledge dominated curriculum to more attention is given to values education and emotional learning. From rigid subject matter boundaries to more interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary approaches. Under the lifelong education for all, from limited access to time bound and space limited education to borderless education, lifeline learning. Characteristics of 21st century education. 21st century education has 7 key features that make it different from a 20th century approach. One, we have the personalized learning. Personalized learning involves different initiating instruction so that students can learn in ways that suit their personal needs. Educators can adjust their teaching methods in several ways. They could differentiate content difficulty, modes of delivery, and assessment strategies. By contrast, the 20th century approach was characterized by a one size fits all approach. In the old model, all students in the class were taught the same content in the same way at the same time. The instruction was usually transmission style under a paradigm of teaching often referred to as the banking model of education. Second, equity, diversity, and inclusivity. A goal of 21st century education is to achieve equality of outcomes. Educators are attempting to close achievement gaps between rich and poor. Diversity is now considered a strength in classrooms. When students are diverse, they learn that difference is okay. They befriend people of different cultures and learn not to be afraid of other cultures around them. Educators now believe that people of all ability levels, physical disabilities, or learning disabilities deserve to be included in mainstream classrooms. This can help them contribute to mainstream life and show them they are welcome and equal participants worldwide. Third, learning through doing. Students are encouraged to learn through doing. The learning through doing approach central idea is that we are much better at knowing, remembering, and using knowledge if we learn actively rather than through passive learning. Fourth, rethinking learner and teacher roles. Classrooms have changed from being teacher centered to student centered. In the past, the students all focus on the teacher and listen to the teacher's words. Now, the teacher focuses on the students who are the center of attention. The teacher's job is to help coach the students as they learn. Number five, community relationships. We increasingly realize how meaningful community engagement is for learning. There are beneficial people in our communities who can teach and inspire our students far better than we can. Sometimes it's vice versa, that teachers learn also from their students. So teachers know they cannot be experts on everything. However, there is an expert for every topic out there in the world. In multicultural societies, community members can also teach us how to teach children within their cultures best. For example, children from indigenous cultures may have grown up with very different learning styles from other children in the class. By engaging with local indigenous people, teachers can learn how best to teach those children in their class. Bringing people from different walks of life into the classroom also helps our students to create connections with people who are not like themselves. These can help inclusion education for social justice and create links between people of different cultures. Sixth, technology. We have our modern technology, and this can be beneficial in classroom setup, especially if it is the long distance mode of learning. Also, it is useful if the setup is also a brick and mortar setup. Like, for example, our use of a projector and other technological device when it comes to uh, projecting our audiovisual presentations. It is essential to use new learning technologies in proper ways. Students should not use technology to prevent them from thinking or help them cheat. Instead, technology should be used to help students access information or think in ways they could not have done so otherwise. We call technologies that help students think harder cognitive tools for learning. Seven, teacher professionalization. Teaching children in this century is much more complicated than it was before before our generation or before our grandmothers or mother father's generation. We need to create personalized lessons, be inclusive, aim for equality, encourage creativity, engage with the community, use technology to enhance learning, and more. To ensure students get the best learning possible, teachers in the 21st century need ongoing training and support. This includes intervention in classes proposed by the administrators or teachers in our classroom. They need to know all the latest research on best teaching practices. They need opportunities to ask questions themselves, try out new strategies, and learn from experts throughout their careers. New developments, trends, and directions in education. For this, we have in total 12. Number one, transformative education. Two, inclusive education. Three, alternative education. Fourth, development education. Fifth, global education. Sixth, peace education. Seventh, multicultural education. Eighth, human rights education. Ninth, civic or citizenship education. 10th, environmental education. 11th, gender studies. 12, future studies. What is transformative education? Transformative education, this is a theory of learning and mainly focused on adult education and young adult learning. Transformative learning is sometimes called transformation learning and focuses on the idea that learners can adjust their thinking based on new information. I just want to plug in that we value here what it's like to unlearn, learn, and relearn things, or we can jumble this chronological this words. We can first use the learn, and then relearn, then the unlearn. Next, inclusive education. Inclusive education means all children in the same classrooms, in the same schools, they learn. And there are opportunities that they can share with each other. There are those groups that can be reprimanded if ever there is some sort of exclusion or bias, not because we do not exclude uh, anyone in the class for as long as they have the necessary skills and they are they are assessed by the curriculum used by the instructor in the class. So inclusive systems value the unique contributions students of all backgrounds bring to the classroom and allow diverse groups to grow side by side and benefit of all. To close the education gap for children with disabilities, there is UNICEF that supports government efforts to foster and monitor inclusive education systems. There are work that focuses on four key areas: advocacy, awareness raising, capacity building, implementation, support. Number three, alternative education. This is a program broadly defined as educational activities that fall outside the traditional K to 12 curriculum, frequently serve students at risk of school failure. Because individual states or school districts define and determine their alternative education programs features, programs may differ in key characteristics such as target population, setting, services, and structure. Next, development education. This is a vital tool in making sense of the complex issues that prevail in our ever changing world. It is an active and creative educational process to increase awareness and understanding of the world we live in. It should challenge perceptions and stereotypes by encouraging empathy, optimism, participation, and action for a just world. Fifth, global education. This emphasizes the unity and interdependence of human society, developing a sense of self and appreciation of cultural diversity, an affirmation of social justice and human rights, and building peace and actions for a sustainable future in different times and places. Global education, this promotes positive values and helps students take responsibility for their actions and see themselves as global citizens who can contribute to a more peaceful, just, and sustainable world. Sixth, peace education. This promotes the knowledge, skills, and attitudes of the prevention of conflict, resolve conflicts peacefully, or create conditions for peace. Core values of nonviolence and social justice are central to peace education. Nonviolence is manifested through values such as respect for human rights, freedom, and trust. Social justice is realized by principles of equality, responsibility, and solidarity. Seventh, multicultural education. Multicultural education refers to any form of education or teaching that incorporates the histories, texts, values, beliefs, and perspective of people from different cultural backgrounds. For examples, teacher may modify or incorporate lessons to reflect the cultural diversity of the students in a particular class at the classroom level. Eighth, human right education. This is the learning that develops the knowledge, skills, and values of human rights with the broad goal of building a universal rights culture. In other words, students should be aware of the issues, concerned about the issue. They are concerned. They are concerned about the issues and capable of standing up for human rights education will move students from understanding human rights concepts to examining their experiences from a human rights perspective and incorporating them into their values and decision making processes. Ninth, civic or citizenship education. The civics and citizenship curriculum develops students' knowledge of political and legal institutions and explores the nature of citizenship in a liberal democracy. Students will develop general skills and capabilities such as appreciating diverse perspectives, empathy, collaboration, negotiation, self awareness, and intercultural understanding. 10th, environmental education. Environmental education is a process that allows individuals to explore environmental issues, engage in problem solving, and take action to improve the environment. As a result, individuals develop a deeper understanding of environmental issues and have the skills to make informed and responsible decisions. The components of environmental education are: first, awareness and sensitivity to the environment and environmental challenges. Second, knowledge and understanding of the environment and environmental challenges. So from the transition of the word awareness and sensitivity towards the knowledge and understanding, then it will move to the attitudes of concern for the environment and motivation to improve or maintain environmental quality. Then it will transition through the skills to identify and help resolve environmental challenges. The last one, the last one, it also, the last but not the least, it includes the participation in activities that lead to the resolution of environmental challenges. 11th, general, I mean, 11th, gender studies. Gender studies is an interdisciplinary field that focuses on the complex interaction of gender with other identity markers such as race, ethnicity, sexuality, nation, and religion. 12, further studies, or according here, future studies. Future studies, that's different from further studies. Anyway, future studies are the systematic study of possible, probable, and preferable futures, including the world views and myths that underlie each future. Peace and human rights education, the development of peace education. The end of World War One brought powerful support for the need for international cooperation and understanding, and helped instill a desire to include these ideals in educational systems. The League of Nations and some non-governmental organizations work together on these ideas, primarily through the International Institute of Intellectual Cooperation. This organization was the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, or UNESCO. In 1946, UNESCO was founded as an umbrella institution of the United Nations. It was charged with planning, developing, and implementing general education changes according to the international politics of peace and security. This organization's statute reinforced the principle of the role of education in the development of peace, and the framework was created for including and applying the principles of peace in the general world education systems. The contemporary socio-political environment, particularly the events in Eastern Europe since the early 1990s, the fear of terrorism, and the increasing gap between developed and undeveloped countries, has created new challenges for understanding peace and development of the underlying principles of responsibility and security. Now, the goals of peace education, its overall aim in education for peace is to help build a peaceful world. It aims to first understand the nature and origins of violence and its effects on both the victim and perpetrator. Second, create frameworks for achieving peace and peaceful creative societies. Third, sharpen awareness about the existence of unpeaceful relationships between people and within and between nations. Fourth, investigate the causes of conflicts and violence embedded within perceptions, values, and attitudes of individuals and society's social and political structures. Next, encourage the search for alternatives and possible nonviolent skills. Then, equip children and adults with personal conflict resolution skills. Show people that violence and war are learned and not an intrinsic part of human nature, and that it is possible to resolve conflict peacefully. Then, create a more peaceful world where all of us may become change agents. Education for peace gives us the skills that will assist in achieving peaceful societies. Then correct the limited understanding of peace held by many people that it is the absence, however contrived, of direct violence, wounding, and killing. Create a better learning environment where conflict and relationships may be explored. Human rights education. These are the fundamental rights and freedoms that belong to every person globally, from birth until death. They apply regardless of where one is from, what one believes, or how one chooses to live one's life. They can never be taken away, although they can sometimes be restricted. For example, if a person breaks the law or in the interest of national security, these fundamental rights are based on shared values like dignity, fairness, equality, respect, and independence. These values are defined and protected by law. Characteristics of human rights, we have three in total. First characteristic, human rights are inalienable. This means that one cannot lose them because they are linked to the very fact of human existence. They are inherent to all human beings. Second characteristic, human rights are indivisible, interdependent, and interrelated. Various human rights are intrinsically connected and cannot be viewed in isolation from each other. The enjoyment of one right depends on the enjoyment of many other rights, and no one right is more important than the rest. Third characteristic, human rights are universal. They apply equally to all people everywhere in the world and with no time limit. Every individual is entitled to enjoy his or her human rights without distinction of race or ethnic background, color, sex, sexual orientation, disability, language, religion, political or another opinion, national or social origin, birth, or another status. UNESCO and human rights. How these two are connected to each other. Human rights are at the heart of UNESCO's mandate. The standards enshrined in the International Human Rights Framework guide all its programs and activities and contribute to its mission of advancing education, culture, science, and communication across the globe. Human rights are defined in the UN Charter, the UDHR, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and the international covenants on economic, social, and cultural rights and civil and political rights. Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It was drafted by representatives from different legal and cultural backgrounds from all regions of the world. The declaration was proclaimed by the United Nations General Assembly in Paris in 10th of December 1948. It is a common standard of achievements for all peoples and all nations. The Universal Declaration includes civil and political rights like the right to life, liberty, free speech, and privacy. It also includes economic, social, and cultural rights like the right to social security, health, and education. The Universal Declaration is not a treaty, so it does not directly create legal obligations for countries. However, it is an expression of the fundamental rights shared by all members of the international community. Furthermore, it has had a profound influence on the development of international human rights law. Some argue that because countries have consistently invoked the Declaration for more than 60 years, it has become binding as a part of customary international law. Further, the Universal Declaration has given rise to a range of other international agreements legally binding on the countries that ratify them. These include the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, ICCPR, and the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, ICESCR. Now, objectives of human rights education, this has the the division into divisions or categories into three: knowledge, skills, and values. Also, we have the human rights education framework, HRE acronym. This provides a common framework through which various subject matters may be taught concerning one another: the topics of globalization, the environment, peace, citizenship, gender equality, democracy, poverty, and intercultural relations all address human rights issues and attempt to build a culture that respects human rights. Rather than teaching about these subject matters in isolation, using an HRE framework, human rights education framework, provides educators and students with a shared value system through which all subjects intersect. Education, gender equality. Gender equality refers to the right of women and men to have the same opportunities to achieve important goals in society, such as education, employment, and income, and contribute to political, social, and cultural development at all levels. Dimensions of gender equality in education. We have in total four dimensions. First dimension, equality of access, means that girls and boys, female and male, are offered equitable opportunities to gain formal, non-formal, or alternative approaches to primary education. Actual attendance rather than enrollment is a better indicator of whether access has been achieved. Second dimension, equality in the learning process, means that girls and boys receive equitable treatment and attention and have equal learning opportunities. This means that girls and boys are exposed to the same curricula, although the coursework may be taught differently to accommodate girls and boys' different learning styles. Equality in the learning process also means that all learners should be exposed to teaching methods and materials free of stereotypes and gender bias. Besides, it means that boys and girls should have the freedom to learn, explore, and develop skills in all academic and extracurricular offerings. Third dimension, equality of educational outcomes. This means that girls and boys enjoy equal opportunities to achieve, and outcomes are based on their talents and efforts. To ensure fair chances for achievement, the length of school careers, academic qualifications, and diplomas should not differ based on a person's sex. Mechanisms for evaluating individuals' achievements should also be free of any gender bias. Fourth dimension, equality of external results, occurs when men and women's status, access to goods and resources, and their ability to contribute, to participate in, and benefit from economic, social, cultural, and political activities are equal. This implies that career opportunities, the time needed to secure employment, after leaving full-time education, and the earnings of men and women with similar qualifications and experience are equal. Next, multilateral education. What is multilateral education? This values different student cultures and prepare students to thrive in a diverse world. At its core, multicultural education fosters equality, justice, and equity, and it establishes the reality of philosophical ideals in classroom environments. Multicultural education, this is what the schools are implementing or establishing because these are suitable educational opportunities for all the students involved. It is also an ongoing process of helping students succeed in their academic, not only in their academic life, but also in their personal lives. The dimensions of multicultural education. James A. Banks' dimensions of multicultural education is used widely by school districts to conceptualize and develop courses, program, and multicultural education projects. We have like yes, five dimensions of multicultural education. The first dimension, content integration. How do we incorporate in education the integration of content in the curriculum? So this deals with the extent to which teachers use examples and content from a variety of cultures and groups to illustrate key concepts, principles, generalizations, and theories in their subject area or discipline. Second dimension of multicultural education, the knowledge construction process. This describes teaching activities that help students understand, investigate, and determine how the implicit cultural assumptions, frames and references, perspectives, and biases of researchers and textbook writers influence how knowledge is constructed. Third dimension, prejudice reduction. The prejudice reduction dimension of multicultural education seeks to help students develop positive and democratic racial attitudes. It also helps students understand how ethnic identity is influenced by schooling and the attitudes and beliefs of dominant social groups. Fourth dimension, an equity pedagogy. An equity pedagogy exists when teachers modify their teaching to facilitate students' academic achievement from diverse racial, cultural, socioeconomic, and language groups. Fifth dimension of multicultural education, we have the empowering of school culture. This dimension involves restructuring the school's culture and organization so that students from diverse racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, and language groups experience equality. An empowering school structure requires the creation of qualitatively different relationships among various groups within schools. Thus, this integrations, construction, reduction, processes, among others that we've mentioned, these have its benefits. Benefits, if we will look at it in a global perspective, of what multicultural education is. First, multicultural education increases productivity because a variety of mental resources are available to complete the same task and promote cognitive and moral growth among all people. Second, it increases creative problem solving skills through the different perspectives applied to the same problems to reach solutions. Third, it increases positive relationships by achieving common goals, respect, appreciation, and commitment to equality among the intellectuals and students. Fourth, multicultural education decreases stereotyping and prejudice through direct contact and interaction among diverse individuals. Fifth, multicultural education renews society's vitality through the richness of its members' diverse cultures and fosters the development of a broader and more sophisticated view of the world. Four pillars of education. The International Commission on Education for the 21st Century to UNESCO, headed by Jacques Delors, identified learning throughout life as a key to meet the challenges of the 21st century. The Commission's 1996 report, Learning, the Treasure Within, highlighted the need for individuals to learn how to learn, to cope with the rapid changes and challenges of the present and the future. It describes a holistic approach to learning that encompasses more than what occurs in the classroom. This is referred to as lifelong learning, a philosophy that involves developing knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values throughout one's life from early childhood through adulthood. First pillar of education, learning to know. This learning type is radically different from acquiring itemized, codified information or factual knowledge, as often stressed in conventional curriculum and rote learning. Rather, it implies the mastering of the instruments of knowledge themselves. Second pillar of education, learning to do. This pillar of learning implies, in the first place, the application of what learners have learned or known into practices. It closely linked to vocational technical education and work skills training. However, it goes beyond narrowly defined skills development for doing specific things or practical tasks in traditional or industrial economies. The emerging knowledge based economy is making human work increasingly immaterial. Learning to do calls for new types of skills, more behavioral than intellectual. The immaterial and the technology are becoming secondary to human qualities and interpersonal relationships. Third pillar, learning to live together. It implies an education taking two complementary paths. On one level, discovering others, and on another, experience of shared purposes throughout life. Specifically, it implies the development of such qualities as knowledge and understanding of self and others, appreciation of the diversity of the human race, and an awareness of the similarities between and the interdependence of all humans, empathy and cooperative social behavior in caring and sharing, respect of other people and their cultures and value systems, capability of encountering others and resolving conflicts through dialogue, and competency in working towards common objectives. Fourth pillar, learning to be. This type of learning was first conceptualized in the report to UNESCO in 1972, Learning to Be, out of the fear that the world would be dehumanized due to technological change. It was based on the principle that the aim of development is the complete fulfillment of man in all the richness of his personality, the complexity of his forms of expression, and his various commitments as an individual, member of a family and a community, citizen and producer, inventor of techniques, and creative dreamer. Our chapter quiz, let's answer. Number one question. It refers to the role of education in developing all the dimensions of the complete person, the physical, intellectual, emotional, and ethical integration of the individual into a complete man. Answer, learning to be. Second question, the best way for a teacher to impart values to his pupils is blank. The answer is acting as a role model. Third question. Which of the following features represents the new paradigm shift in education? Letter A, inflicting corporal punishment. Letter B, always scolding his pupils. Letter C, constant repetition of actions to make them routinary. Letter D, acting as a role model. Answer is letter D, acting as a role model. Third question, which of the following features represents the new paradigm shift in education? A, traditional pedagogies. B, lifelong education for all. C, rigid subject matter boundaries. D, knowledge as the only learning outcome. Answer is B, lifelong education for all. Number four question. Which of the following conditions manifests a trend of globalization? A. Establishment of stronger boundaries between and among nations. B. Increased awareness on the importance of national culture and traditions. C. Less and less impact of human activity on the planet Earth. D. The incorporation of local and national economies into a worldwide global economy. And our answer, letter D, the incorporation of local and national economies into a worldwide global economy. Number five question. What is the concern of multicultural education or multicultural education? Letter A, anticipating the future and imagining possible and probable futures. Letter B, gender equality and harnessing of the role of women in development. Letter C, promoting care for the environment and building a global culture of ecological responsibility. D, the exploration of concepts of cultural diversity, similarities, and prejudices to promote cultural understanding. Letter D, answer. The exploration of concepts of cultural diversity, similarities, and prejudices to promote cultural understanding. Number six, which of the following may be considered an economic impact of globalization on education? A. Increasing commercialization of education and the corporate takeover of education. Letter B. Weakening of the notion of the citizen as a unified and unifying concept. Letter C. New technologies of information and communication creates new approaches to learning. Letter D. Reduction of state and government support and subsidy for education. The answer is letter A. Increasing commercialization of education and the corporate takeover of education. Seventh question. Which of the following aptly describes Marshall McLuhan's concept of global village? Or answer, the idea that because of rapid globalization and development in technology, the world has become one global village where increased diversity and difference among people has become more pronounced than ever. 8. When planning her lessons and units, Mrs. Jones is careful to include books and resources from a variety of cultures and ethnic groups. What kind of education is this? A. Multilingual education. B. Transformative education. C. Multicultural education. Or D. Gender-free education. And our answer is letter C. Multicultural education. Number 9. Which of the following is not a characteristic of globalization? A. Stretching social, political, and economic activities across political frontiers, regions, and continents. B. The growing magnitude of interconnectedness and flows of trade, investment, and migration. C. A speeding up of global interactions. And processes through worldwide systems of transportation and communication. D. The expansion of economic protectionism and isolation of poor countries. Answer D. The expansion of economic protectionism and isolation of poor countries. Number 10. Question. Which of the following illustrates the major paradigm shift in education in the 21st century? A. Shift from rigid subject matter to a more interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary pedagogical approach. B. Shift from values education and emotional learning to knowledge dominated curriculum. C. From contextualized themes generated from global and local realities to pre organized subject matter. D. From more flexible learning styles to a prescribed pedagogy. Answer is letter A. Shift from rigid subject matter to a more interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary pedagogical approach.